How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Or hipster bros, I'm Hipster Chief 414. Or good evening. And before we jump into the video, I wanted to talk about the following context of this video. This video is going to be an analysis not only to mental health, but as well as those who are dealing with a rough time. If you or a loved one is dealing with thoughts of either hurting yourself or hurting themselves or yourself to the point of what I call a permanent solution, which is not a good thing, I recommend you call the number down below if you live in the United States. If you don't, call the other number if you live outside of the United States. Alright, let's get to the video. So, recently I have not had any internet at all. No internet at all whatsoever. So I'm not able to stream on Twitch. But recently I've been working on another video at this moment and decided to take a little break from editing out this video. But the thing is, what I have in mind is that the reason why I titled this video, Why Joker and No Longer Human? Well, easy. Recently I bought No Longer Human, the Junji Ito adaptation by Uzama Dezai, who is a very famed Japanese literature. Basically, Uzama Dezai is one of the big three in Japan. But reading this book, as you can see right here, No Longer Human by Junji Ito, the adaptation is by Junji Ito, but the novel is by Uzama Dezai. The reason why I say that this book is considered to be, why I consider this book to be very important. Important to the point that if you have mental health, I recommend you read this book unless if some parts of the book will trigger you. I don't recommend it at all. Me being the type of person who has mental health issues such as schizoaffective disorder, as well as social anxiety disorder and major depression. Yeah, it triggered me a lot reading this book, but it took me a while to get back into reading it again because it was such a dark and gritty story. Other than that, before I started reading the book again, I watched one of my favorite movies that I just mentioned right now. Joker. Yeah. So, I watched Joker again, and it got me thinking of No Longer Human. Because I remember, who was it? I think it was Joey the Enemy Man, as well as Connor, or Sea Dog, as best as you know him. And anyway, they talked about this in a podcast. They talked about Uzama Dezai, No Longer Human, not the anime character. If you think about the anime character, no. The actual, that anime character is based off of this author, Uzama Dezai. Uzama Dezai was born in northern Japan in the year 1909. But the thing is, when he came from a very wealthy family, from huge farmlands and stuff in northern Japan. But the thing is, in his both childhood and his youth, he dealt with his own personal demons, as well as what people perceived of him as a person. So it got bad to the point that he eventually dropped out of the Tokyo University of the French department. Basically, he was learning how to speak French, which is a very cool language. I highly recommend it. Parlez en français, monsieur. Comment allez-vous? Anyway, he dropped out, but he instead wrote so many of his works, including Run Melos and The Setting Sun, which is another book I recommend by Uzama Dezai. It's another great book, really good in literature. But No Longer Human is considered to be, end quote, to other people who have read the book, they consider it to be his suicide note. But the thing is, the history of Uzama Dezai's life is that he attempted suicide multiple times. One with a lover, to where she passed away and he didn't. He was saved from a fishing crew and eventually got disowned by his family, which made him more depressed and sad and angered. And the second time, he was married and him and his wife tried to commit suicide by taking sleeping pills again, and they both lived and proceeded to have a divorce. But what happened was, with Uzama Dezai, he eventually went back home, met up with a, a servant of his that is no longer serving for his family, and they got to connect again as friends. Meanwhile, writing the book No Longer Human, though the setting sun became a statue of basically giving him a big title in Japan, especially since if you look at the history of Japan, I'm not going to mention what happened in that time period when he wrote that book because there's already a whole context of history about it. I'm not going to mention it up because I don't want to offend anyone whatsoever. But going on with his life story, Uzumao Dazai, he eventually wrote No Longer Human, and a month after he wrote the book, he was also writing a book called just plainly Goodbye, and he never finished it. And unfortunately, by June or July of 1949, his body was found on his 39th birthday. He was only 38 years old, and he passed away. He drowned himself in the Tamagawa Canal alongside with a lover of his. And his note said, and quote, "I can no longer write." And it's a very touching, dark story. But other than that, reading this book, or I could say it's a book now because I don't usually when I read Junji Ito's mangas, they're very touching. They're very dark and gritty, as well as extraordinary imagery. From what I've seen throughout this book, this imagery was so beautifully enhanced. I can't even show a lot of it because it says in the back it's rated mature, which is a huge disclaimer to those for my mature audience because I don't recommend this book to kids. I don't recommend them to kids at all. I recommend this to 17 and up because this book is pretty dark, it's pretty gritty, and it's sad. Very sad. The story talks about I can't even talk about because it's such a dark story. But all I can say to summarize this whole story is this. Mine has been a life of much shame. I cannot even guess myself what it must be to live the life of a human being. Plagued by a maddening anxiety, the terrible disconnect between his concept of happiness and the joy of the rest of the world, Yozo Oba plays the clown in his dissolute life, holding up a mask for those around him, as he spirals ever downward, locked arm in arm with death. Uzumao Dazai's immortal and supposedly autobiographical work of Japanese literature is perfectly adapted here into a manga by Junji Ito. The imagery wrenches open the text of the novel one line at a time to sublimate Yozo's mental landscape into something even more delicate and grotesque. This ultimate in art by Ito proved that nothing can surpass the terror of the human psyche. Basically, if you have read No Longer Human, the original book, I highly recommend you read this book. But the reason why I'm also mentioning Joker is that the ending to this book is so shocking. This manga is so shocking and so depressing that, or let's just say it's up on the same level of context as Joker, Joaquin Phoenix and Joker. It's on that same level, and I highly recommend it. It took me a while to finish it because a lot of it really, I wouldn't say a good amount, all of it was relatable, but certain parts were very relatable in my life, and it was very haunting. It was very sad, and after I read it, I immediately threw the book down the ground. I started screaming and crying to the point that I didn't even know how to deal with this sort of detail of art. The art is beautiful. The story is very sad and heartbreaking. It's hard for me to talk about because I get choked up about these things. So I highly recommend No Longer Human. Either the Junji Ito adaptation or the official book by Uzumao Dazai. I will leave a link down below to where you could buy both of them on Amazon, because I consider them to be very important pieces of art alongside with Joker, because Joker depicted mental health, a movie and a story that's basically about a man's descent to madness. It was the same thing with No Longer Human, except minus the killings, more like just complete sadness of a human being that's just being ripped apart from their life. But I want to know what you guys think. If you read the book, if you read No Longer Human, or if you watched Joker, and what are your thoughts on both of them being entangled together? Let me know in the comment section down below. Make sure you check out my Twitch streams. I'll probably be back online next week when I have internet. When I have internet. But thank you guys so much for all the support. Another video will be uploaded pretty soon on this YouTube channel. And remember, my fellow hipster bros, stay awesome. And remember, if you feel like you're endangering yourself, or if a friend of yours is thinking about endangering themselves, please call this number down below. If you live inside or outside the US, down below in the description. Stay awesome, my fellow hipster bros.